What is the most tragic scene in Death Note? For me, is this frame of Yagami Sachiko weeping alone in her empty kitchen after the passing of her husband, exactly 1 month since the day her daughter Sayu was kidnapped by an armed gang. And while she hadn't known it yet, less than 3 months later, she would end up losing her son as well. Death Note is full of complex and fascinating characters, particularly the quirky super geniuses that made the series equal part entertaining and brilliant. But over the years, many people have remarked that while the male characters are great, the women of Death Note often bear the blunt end of its writing, used as disposable plot accessories and or simple-minded lackeys. Of course, much of this can be attributed to the work's genre and its time, since the majority of 1990s to 2000s shonen manga don't tend to quote-unquote reward female characters with good writing. However, Death Note offers a harrowing view of what danger an egotistical and deranged man can do unto society and those around him. For that reason, there is perhaps more to be said about the fate of its women. With the exception of SPK's Hal Littner, every recurring female character in Death Note met a tragic end of some kind. Murdered, traumatized, or so distraught they end up taking their own life. More than any characters, they often find themselves reduced to a passive state, stripped of autonomy and even their own personhood. While the main conflict presents Kira's impact on society from a macro point of view, dissecting Death Note from a gendered perspective may offer an uncomfortably intimate glimpse into the victim's harm not only by the Death Note, but by personal ego. Deeply entrenched in the patriarchal division of labor, the Yagami family represents the ideal nuclear unit of modern Japan. One breadwinning father, one homemaking mother, a son and a daughter, where each of them embodies their respective role exceedingly well. The respectable Soichiro is every bit the image of modern Japanese masculinity, entirely devoted to his high-ranking job and spends very little time with his family. Although it's played for suspense, it's notable that he was introduced as the chief of the NPA long before he was introduced as a father, and that the first time he comes home is about 2 weeks after the story has already begun. In contrast, Sachiko is depicted only as a wife and mother, whose identity is inherently tied to the achievements of her husband and children. So much so that her son's perfect report card elicits an almost euphoric reaction. And with luck, they manage to produce 2 ideal children. The brilliant, prim, and proper overachieving Light stands as a reflection of his father's status, reputation, and he is set to carry on the family legacy. And Sayu, while not the brightest bulb in the string light, is decidedly demure, not rebellious, and conventionally pretty. After all, she's only expected to follow her mother's example. By all accounts, this should be a very happy family, since they are the model that all other families should aspire to. But even from their first ever interaction, there is notable distance between every one of them. They're uncomfortably formal, they eat dinner without looking at each other, their conversations center around uncontroversial and matter-of-fact topics. All the time, Light was hiding a horrifying secret. The tragedy of the Yagami family begins at the moment Light gives in to his ego and pursuit of totalitarian power. This exacerbates an already delicate relationship between the family, despite how good of a liar he is, and how much Soichiro loves his son, and how much the women are kept in the dark, uninformed and ignorant to whatever happening around them. But the fallout that pushes Sachiko and Sayu in the middle of the crossfire didn't come from Light's ego alone, but also Soichiro's. Soichiro's passionate involvement in the Kira case can be attributed to two factors: his own sense of justice and his need to prove his son's goodness, both of which stands as a reflection of his ego. From the perspective of a high-ranking police officer, the fact that Kira kills criminals isn't just morally wrong, it is an insult to the justice system, a system that he sincerely believes in and has built himself an impressive career within it. Additionally, if his beloved son, his hope, his honor, his legacy, a boy he tried to model after himself but better, turns out to be that deranged murderer, then what does that say about him as a person and as a father? This does not diminish Soichiro's ethics. By all account, he is one of the more morally upstanding characters in the series. But even if his reaction is understandable, it is clear that his ego is also at stake, in the way that he fiercely defends Light as though anything besides an innocent verdict poses an insult to his own personhood. Because of that, he tends to react erratically upon knowing about L's suspicion of Light, and even thinks himself capable of violence if L turns out to be correct, which he was. Only when L turns his suspicion elsewhere reluctantly does Soichiro notably relax. On his deathbed, he once again checks to confirm his own biases before peacefully passing away. Soichiro doesn't care about the truth as much as he cares to uphold the belief that Light is innocent. Light is a good kid. But by unknowingly covering for his guilty son and obstructing the investigation with his volatile behaviors, all while going against his wife and daughter's wishes that he resigns from the killer hunt, he pushes Sayu, the true innocent, the good kid, right into Mello's own nefarious game of pride.
次は八神総一郎の娘、八神左右をさらえ。
Light has many romantic partners over the course of the story, which is funny because he doesn't display any capacity to form romantic connection, and especially to women. In fact, it is outright stated that while Light dates several girls throughout high school and college, he is incapable of loving any of them. He only uses them as props. And as we remember, Light's most enduring loves and useful props are Amane Misa and Takada Kiyomi. Misa and Takada are Light's most loyal followers because they 100% believe in his divinity, given onto him by none other than himself. They are willing to feel his ambition and commit atrocities by his words. And to the bitter end, neither of them ever considered betraying Light, even when Mikami eventually does, only to be met with increasing demands and resentments from the object of their affection. Light and Misa's relationship happened by chance. It was beyond his control that another Shinigami would drop the Death Note. It was beyond his control that Misa should be a Kira fanatic. It was beyond his control that Misa manages to pin him down. Misa was not Light's choice, and he makes it abundantly clear that if he were to pick a sidekick, it would never be her. He makes no secret of his disdain for her supposed lack of intelligence, as though having her attached to his name is an insult. And yet he seems rather fond of Misa at times, the way one would find joy in playing with a pretty doll, able to perform in any way one desires given foolproof directions. Their relationship has always been characterized by an imbalanced power dynamic, and neither of them makes a point in denying it. Misa knows and willingly lets herself be used, and Light considers Misa a powerful but handicapped chess piece that he successfully maneuvered to victory. It is then no problem for him to toss her aside once he has no more use for her. As her life revolves around pleasing him, He only sees her as a sad, inconsequential pawn in the hands of a god. Initially, the way Light approaches Takada Kiyomi is distinctly different from Misa. They had been dating during college as both assessed the other as suitable for maintaining their public image. In a way, they share some form of respect even if it were entirely superficial. Light has Takada believe that she was chosen for her merits and the propaganda war she wages for his cause, and his ego seeps into her. Takada sees herself as superior among the Kira supporters. She alone is fit to be his spokesperson. More than that, she is to be his consort, paraded around like a queen. She sees herself especially as superior to Amane Misa, who Light tells her is too stupid to stand beside him. But her most damning mistake is believing for a single moment that she is Light's equal. For all the labor that she performs for him, against her better instincts, braving public scrutiny, the second she asks him to return the deed in her time of need, she realizes all too late that he has never seen her as such. Takada Kiyomi is no different from Amane Misa. In a mind game full of intrigues, where players lose by their lives, the death that struck the hardest was Misora Naomi. Where else death carries vindication, Soichiro resignation, matte and mellow clear intent, Misora Naomi's defeat paints the story with a sense of futility. In contrast to L's theatric in his war against Kira, Misora Naomi works quietly without much trumpet or fanfare. And yet she comes closer to anybody by far in the shortest amount of time to pinning down Light Yagami with concrete evidence, and even outsmarts him constantly during their encounter. However, the biggest challenge she faces, and one that would eventually lead to her downfall, is perhaps the dismissive attitude of those around her. This conflict is set up right at her first appearance, where Naomi demonstrates her sharp and intuitive observational skills upon hearing her fiancé Ray Penber recount his investigation. But as soon as she opens up about her take on the situation, Ray immediately shuts her down.
君は確かに優秀な FBI 捜査官だった。しかし今は僕のフィアンセでしかない。もう君は捜査官じゃないんだ。
By being Ray Penber's wife, Naomi is expected to leave behind everything that made up her as a person. Her ambition, her inquisitive nature, her past before she met him. She is to listen, but must never give her own opinions on the matter, much less suggest what he should do or think, only nod along and comfort him in his own bubble of ignorance, while she wallows in her own domestic duties. Many people have called Ray out for this, and deservingly so. Would you marry a top-of-the-line FBI agent and expect her to be a sexy lamp that can also carry a water tray? Actually, don't answer that. And to think that if he had given a single thought to Naomi's suggestion that the suspicious chain of events he just witnessed was in fact suspicious, he may have taken that information to his superior. It may even pique the interest of L. The bus incident might have been thoroughly investigated, and by some chance, he might have even changed the course of L and Kira's first major clash. But no, despite knowing how good of an agent Naomi was before, her idea is not worth a consideration. As his wife, her intellect akins to nothing. With the rejection of Naomi's advice, Ray Penber plays right into Kira's hands, cluelessly. Having now confirmed that her hunch was correct, Naomi sets out to gather more evidence to present to the one man who she knows will never dismiss her. L. L would listen. After all, he had trusted her to be his sole investigator in the Beyond Birthday case just a few years prior. L remembers her gallant effort, her insightful commentaries. Elle would not turn her away as quickly as her fiancé does. However, Elle resides only in the ivory tower, looking down from high up above. He's never on the ground. He does not see when she's turned away time and time again by the institution who deems her an outsider, unworthy of trust. Desperate, disheartened by rejection, and still mourning her fiancé, Naomi is hooked on Kira's charming smile. He praises her, saying he believes in her, that he would do everything in his power to help her, a front, of course, to conceal his sinister and murderous intent. The story of Misora Naomi is a quiet tragedy, laced with pitfalls at every turn. Her restless need to prove her capability, met with endless scrutiny from those around her, before she even had a chance, and even by those she loves the most. Her clinging on to hope, only it turned out to be a deception. And as she unknowingly gives her life away, Aizawa, a task force member, an officer who actually has the authority to contact Elle, happens to walk upon the same street. But before he could see what's going on right in front of him, he opens his large umbrella, blocking his view of the woman and the crime being committed against her. He does not see her. She is invisible. And with her death, all the work she's accomplished, which could very well bring Elle within an arm's reach towards victory, is sealed away in the realm beyond, futile. It is not a stretch to say that the tragedies which define the women of Death Note were caused in no small part by the ego of the men around them. Light most of all, but there were others too. They are treated like tools to fuel ambition or collateral damage in a game of life and death. Some are not even at all taken into consideration. Worse yet, they could be right out dismissed and disappeared, as it happens the last time we see Misora Naomi. The last time we see Yagami Sayu and Yagami Sachiko, they were mere footnotes in the story of a respectable husband/father and a megalomaniac son/brother. And though there was a moment of realization for Takada Kiyomi, it was already too late. And finally, lonely and devastated, it was up to the clueless Amane Misa to end it all.